Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryent, with my permanent guest, Cammy. Hi there, Cammy.
Hey, Bryent.
You're down there in Skype chilling. And Peter, the impermanent guest. Hello, welcome back. Oh my gosh. Was that a werewolf? A hairy man just flew across my screen. Peter, welcome back.
Thank you.
Everyone, Peter's here. It's the first Friday of the greatest month, October. It's Podicus Magnus. It's going to be my birthday soon. Halloween. It's fall. There's just too many good things happening right now. If you're just joining us, welcome. This is Mythstorie. So every week, Cammy and I on Wednesdays will pick a myth or a legend, and then we'll try and give you a story behind that, and then we're going to discuss it with facts and learning stuff and clicks.
Sometimes science. Remember that one time with the science?
Yeah. And sometimes it goes into psychotherapy when you talk about Medusa and you don't realize it, so you're way over your head, but you make it work. That's Mythstorie. That's what Mythstorie is. And Peter joins us sometimes too, because we like to have these longer discussions, and we're tackling a big subject. I said it earlier. We're going to discuss the werewolf, and there's a lot there to unpack, obviously, because there's lots of different stories behind werewolves. But Peter and Cammy have their own little story behind it. Werewolves. It's Halloween month, fall. It's ripe for werewolf, and we're really excited. This time a year ago, Cammy and I basically had just kicked off the podcast. We had just recorded a couple episodes. We were getting it off the ground, and then we were fortunate. I mean, Halloween's a great time. We did 4 Halloween themed episodes where we talked about mummies, banshees, Vlad the Impaler, and one more that I can't remember. And Cammy and I have decided to kind of redo that. We have a theme. We're going to be hitting on 4 subjects regarding murders that weren't solved. So it's going to be things like the Pied Piper. Yeah.
He's a murderer.
Killer. The Axemen of New Orleans from the early 20th century. Then we dive into Elizabeth Bathory. If you know your Hungarian noblewomen, you should. And then we're going to end this whole shebang with another Podicus Magnus, which is going to be our second Suburban Legends. We're really excited. It was a huge success last time. Basically, we ask for you to give us your kind of local stories. They can even be personal stories, but just local things, whether that happened to you. We had someone who talked about their crazy experiences in a haunted house. We've had haunted bridges. We had a crazy dude who wanted to buy Hitler and towed him around. He was real. So
Spike-horn, yes.
We emphasize, that's right, Spike-horn. Yeah, we emphasize on local stuff. So just local, send it to us. We're on Facebook, Twitter. You can reach us personally. I'm Bryant. How's it going? And yes, so please send us your stuff and listen to the old Suburban Legends. It was really, really fun. We really had a great time doing that. So, but after that Suburban Legends, Cammy and I will conclude Spooktacular October with Jack the Ripper.
Ooh.
So we're going back to the Victorian era. We're going to talk about that crazy sun gun who did some gross stuff. So that being said, this episode and the next 4 episodes, maybe 5th, are going to be a little like graphic talking. I got the E for explicit on here because Peter is such a potty mouth. But just keep in mind, in this werewolf one, there's going to be some and blood and stuff like that. So lots of sound effects. It's like they call us like kabuki. It's very dramatic and intense. So just keep that in mind. With Cammy and I recorded some of the other episodes. They definitely are going to be a little graphic. Nothing too crazy, I would say. If you liked last year's like Vlad, he's impaling people. That's kind of gross. If you're not cool with that, then just keep that in mind. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about werewolves now. Rock, paper, scissors, who goes first? Go.
Oh, Oh, okay.
You guys ruined it. Oh no.
We both got scissors for those listeners at home.
All right.
All right.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Okay. I'm going first. Or do I get to pick?
No,
I'll go first because Peter doesn't want to.
I love going first. We probably should have planned this out ahead of time.
I know.
Yeah, we should have thought about it. I picked scissors twice, and Peter picked scissors and then paper. Just for the listeners at home, they have no idea what just happened.
Yeah, don't worry.
They just heard a bunch of like slapping on the microphone.
I'm gonna edit this majestically, so it'll work. Don't worry. It'll be perfect. All right, Cammy.
So Bryent, you're gonna be doing sound effects, right?
Pew pew pew.
Yeah, it'll be really good.
I'm just gonna try to crack her up the entire time.
Well, Cammy, please regale us with your werewolf.
Sure. So I'm going to go over my sources at the end, so just keep that in mind, because it might give a little too much away.
Mm-hmm.
In 16th century Germany, an era plagued by famine and war, werewolves were a familiar enemy, men who made pacts with Satan himself to become part beast, aiding their search for power in a time that few possessed it. Bedburg, Germany, was terrorized by one such beast. The town folks noticed the existence of a wolf problem when they first found livestock torn limb from limb around the area's farming land. While they found the remains in the morning, they couldn't catch the creature in the act. It was baffling and frustrating, but then it got worse. The town's own children began showing up murdered or dead, with their throats missing along with organs and flesh. The town spurred to action. They gathered the most able bodies and swift of shot among them and formed groups to hunt the beast. One night, a hunting party caught the scent of the creature and found a large wolf bloodied from a fresh kill. They cornered the beast and cut off its left paw, but he escaped. The next morning, something strange happened. A villager by the name of Peter Stumpp was missing his left hand. Now, either no one in the hunting party knew Stumpp, or they could not believe a connection was possible between a man and a creature. Either way, Stumpp was not accused of being a wolf. But the murders continued, and now pregnant women were the targets. The Schottenjägers increased their hunts. They staked themselves in every corner of the village, its farms, and the outlying woods, until one day they found the trail again. A young schoolgirl was taken from her playgroup by a giant wolf. He grabbed her by the collar, but was unable to penetrate through the fabric at her neck. She managed to escape and alert a group of hunters to where the wolf was hiding. As they approached, they caught sight of him. But as he rose, he transformed into a man before their eyes. He carried no weapons but a staff, and no garments adorned his naked body, nor were any wolf pelts found nearby. They seized him quickly and brought him back to town to answer for his crimes. But how does a man become a wolf? Peter Stumpp recounted his meeting with the devil, where he pledged his undying commitment to evil in exchange for a girdle that would transform his body to onlookers, so that he might satisfy his inner hunger in the ways of a wolf. He disclosed his part in 16 murders, one of which was his own son, whose brain he ate raw.
Ugh.
He was sentenced for his heinous crimes to die on the rack, whereupon he was tortured for hours while he confessed his entire life and his fascination with the dark arts and devil worship. On October 31st, 1589, the Bedburg town was rid of their murderous fiend. But how many more girdles has Satan left to give?
Ooh.
Yeah. That dude's messed up.
He was creeptastic.
Yeah, that's wild. Wow. Well, that's a really good werewolf story to start on. It's a really good connection to the medieval stuff that I'm going to touch on later. Well, Peter, yours isn't too far off. A couple 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to be discussing? What is your beast?
It's the beast of Gevaudan. This is a story from the French countryside during the 18th century.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. We'll lay it on us.
This is told in the form of a found letter. So, Paris, France, July 10th, 1789. To whomever discovers this letter, our great country seems to stand on the brink of revolution, and while I welcome it, I fear for my personal safety. If my voice should fall silent in the coming days, may this document record certain curious details that may be beneficial to future French citizens. My name is Jacques Portefeuille. I was born the son of a poor, illiterate farmer who worked the fields below the Marguerite Mountains in the province of Gevaudan. Today, I am an aspiring naturalist who corresponds with the king himself, and I owe this new life and the fact that I can read and write at all to a series of violent and horrific events that occurred when I was but a child. I was 10 years old in the year 1764, the year of the beast. It was harvest season, and the farming villages of Gevaudan were busy reaping the fields and fattening their herds before the winter. Rumors had begun circling of a great beast stalking the fields and roads around Gevaudan. We were accustomed to the company of wolves. They were a constant threat to our livestock, but this creature was different. It preferred to hunt people. Marie-Jeanne Vallée, a girl from the neighboring village, reported being stalked by a large creature. She described the beast as standing taller than a wolf, with an elongated head and flattened snout. Its tail was not bushy like a wolf, but was long, with a tuft of black hair at its tip. Its fur was tawny and streaked with black stripes. The girl surely would have been killed had the bulls in the field not chased the beast off. News of the attack reached the big cities, where Vallée became known as the Maid of Gevaudan. A few days later, the beast claimed its first victim. Jan Boulet, a boy I knew from church, was found dead in a field near his home. His throat had been ripped out. The attacks increased over the next few weeks. The beast seemed to target women, children, and lone men. Victims were killed by bites to the head and neck and were rarely ever eaten. The attacks became so widespread and frequent that rumors began circulating that there was not one beast, but perhaps a whole pack of them. People were warned not to travel alone and began working the fields in groups. One night, I was returning from the harvest festival with 7 of my friends. Our bellies warmed by draughts of hot apple cider, we quickened our steps as we hurried home down the darkened road. The moon was new, and we had only a small lantern to light our way. We approached a hill that had been crowned with great sheafs of harvested wheat. Suddenly, one of the huge bundles appeared to tumble down the hill towards our group. The beast crashed into us like a ball from a cannon. We became scattered. In the faint light, I could make out the shape of the beast. This was no wolf. It stood on its hind legs as it tried to separate us. Its spine was curled, and its chest stood out like a man who suffered from backaches. Its claws curled down not like a paw, but like fingers. It looked like a wolf, but it moved and hunted like a man. I suddenly remembered that I carried a knife in my pocket. My father had insisted on it. When the creature turned away to menace my friend, I charged on the beast and drove my bayonet into its flank. It howled and turned on me, knocking me to the ground. Our scattered group had reformed, and my friends began throwing stones at the beast. Perhaps seeing its opportunity lost, it turned and fled into the nearby woods. A few days later, a messenger arrived at my home. News of the incident had reached the ears of King Louis himself. I was to receive 300 liras for my bravery and was to receive a state-sponsored education. My friends received 350 liras divided among them. The king was to send one of his most capable soldiers to hunt down and destroy the beast. Captain Duhamel of the Clermont-Price Dragoons made a grand entrance into our humble province, but his haughty attitude chased against the proud local farmers. The captain's attempts at forming a hunting party sputtered and failed. He reportedly had the beast cornered but once again his support wavered and the beast was able to escape by crossing the Trier River. The king then sent a pair of renowned hunters, Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Vamoul de Verval and his son Jean-Francois. The hunters arrived at the local inn in a great coach trailed by a baying team of 8 bloodhounds. Dienneval was a seasoned wolf hunter and preferred cunning and stealth to Duhamel's direct military approach. But Dienneval also failed. The attacks continued. It was almost like the beast knew where the hunters would be and planned its attacks many miles away. The king then sent out his best shot, the lone arquebus bearer of the kingdom, Francois Antoine. His unusual weapon could fire a hooked projectile that could entangle a difficult quarry. Antoine killed a large wolf a few days after reaching Gevaudan and had it stuffed and sent to Versailles. The beast caused a sensation at court, and images of it were reproduced in the newspapers. I have seen these images, and while it does depict an unusually large animal, it does not resemble the beast I saw. Antoine continued to hunt in the woods around Gevaudan, eventually tracking and killing the beast's mate and pups. The pup was discovered to possess a double dewclaw, a genetic flaw unique to the great Beaucheron hunting dogs. Perhaps the beast had been some strange crossbreed. A few weeks after the news of the beast's destruction had caused such a stir, the attacks began once again. Based on my calculations, the beast had attacked over 200 people in just over 2 years and had killed over 100 souls. While the royals in Versailles congratulated themselves and threw lavish parties, the beast continued to prey on the poor and disadvantaged farmers of Gevaudan. The beast was no wolf, nor was it some mutated half-breed, nor lion or hyena as some speculated. The beast was smart and cunning and knew of the plotting and movements of men. It killed not for food but for pleasure, and it rarely left witnesses. Jean Chastel had watched the spectacle from his chateau and hatched a wild theory. He dabbled in the occult and was shunned by many in the province for his sacrilegious views. Chastel had come to believe that the beast was not an animal at all, but a loup-garou, a werewolf. Chastel began developing a unique weapon to hunt the creature. He combined a large caliber bullet with buckshot he had made from inherited silver. Chastel hunted the woods surrounding Gevaudan, and he did succeed in killing a large creature. An autopsy, now widely published as the Marin Report, found the remains of victims in the beast's belly. Chastel was celebrated locally as the true slayer of the beast of Gevaudan. But I remain unconvinced. Though the attacks have certainly slowed, they never stopped completely. Curiously, the attacks now seem confined to just a few miles from the Chastel estate. I have come to believe that the creature Chastel killed was a decoy, a means of covering up a more sinister and evil reality. Though he is now a man of advanced age, Chastel has not visibly aged since he was celebrated for killing the beast of Gevaudan over 20 years ago. His tawny hair does not contain even a hint of gray, and his beard is as black and bushy as ever. Chastel has undoubtedly read some of my writings in nature journals where I have theorized about the origins of the beast. He has requested a meeting with me later today. I am uncertain if I will survive the encounter. God save the king, Monsieur Jacques Portefeuille.
Oh my goodness, he's not going to live through that.
Portefeuille, no. Peters, well done.
Good job.
So
could I go over my sources quickly?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I forgot. So,
Time.
Wikipedia, Peter Stumpp, and a true discourse declaring the damnable life and death of one Stumpp Peter. And that was, the source was the original pamphlet, but it is housed in the British Library, bl.uk.
Awesome.
Very cool.
And my sources were also Wikipedia, Beast of Gevaudan, and Jacques Portefeuille, A Child at the Time of the Beast by Monsieur
chills.
Lagrave. So it is a highly suspect source, but it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you nailed the story. I mean, like a lot of what you said was like you ingrained the actual history behind it. There was a lot going on there. So no, that's great. You both did excellent jobs. Those were really good stories.
Thank you.
And I love it. So werewolf, Old English word, were meaning man, wolf, it's a wolf. Go figure. So man wolf makes sense. And the beast of Gevaudan, it was a real thing. And what it was wolves. It was wolves killing people. That's what they do. That's what they've been doing. I believed that, but I didn't realize how it was just very common throughout all of history. Wolves just murdering people. That's why all those stories about the big bad wolf exist, because parents had to really teach the kids the wolf is gonna kill you. So just run, like just stay away. So. But I like the duality of it because Cammy's definitely implies the mysticism behind it and the man wolf thing. Yours does as well, but the beast of Gevaudan. I briefly looked at it and there wasn't a lot of hysteria as far as assuming it was a crazy creature for the most part. I mean it was a problem of having these damn wolves. Now they were huge. Some of the wolves that they did end up killing were like 5'7" and like long and like 130 pounds. So wolves can get huge. Wolves aren't like pups as far as it goes. But yeah, so there's a lot here. We recently did zombies, and there was a lot there. So I'm not going to be able to unpack everything that there is about werewolves, but I'm going to go over just some overlaying things in general, and talk about the things that I didn't know about that you guys might not know about, and just kind of go from there. Werewolf, I did kind of understand that was an old English term, and it comes from Europe for sure in that area, and the term werewolf has been used around the 15th century in Germany. And today it's Werewolf, and werewolf is used in a lot of different ways. Frankish, Anglo-Norman, Middle Latin, all these medieval terms were they had a kind of a variation of it, like in French and Anglo-Norman, it was like Gerewolf and things like that, or Gerewolf now that I know that G's are J's. But they're all of these there's a kind of a pinpoint area where it sort of starts, but it's weird. It takes a deeper root, and you can kind of see it. Well, I mean, wolves are important. I mean, they're obviously important to Rome. We talked about Romulus and Remus, and the being men who were raised by a wolf and things like that. But there are some deep roots regarding that. A big part of it is the concept of therianthropy, which is turning into it's therian, which is a Greek word for wild animal or beast, and then anthropos, like anthropology, human being. So therianthropy is sort of the mythological ability to turn into an animal, and that's been around for ages. I mean, for forever. In fact, Gilgamesh sort of discusses like turning specifically into like a beast. So we actually did an episode on Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is one of the oldest written stories ever, and so that kind of shows you how deep it goes, and it makes a lot of sense. But
if I may, I mean, like, when you think about the history of man, like probably the earliest domesticated animal was the wolf. Sure. We have this ancient connection with this animal. So it figures that we have so many stories about wolves and about, this human wolf hybrid creature. It's probably very, very old.
We share a lot of their DNA because we've been around them for so long, like bacterial DNA.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and well, a big thing. So going into the werewolf, sort of that specific idea is interesting, and it comes through history in a lot of different ways. A lot of it has to do with sort of the idea of lycanthropy or clinical lycanthropy, as it's sort of taught, and there's a lot of classical Greek references to this. So there's stories, ancient stories like Gilgamesh, which dates back to 2100 BC, where a man turns into a wolf. But coming further into like the classical period, we have descriptions of people kind of like the idea of the term lunatic. Luna being a moon, the moon changing you. This all kind of melded, but people kind of turning crazy and acting irrational and things like that. That's where the lycanthropy kind of came into. Didn't necessarily mean you were turning into a werewolf, but you definitely were turning into like some sort of an animal. Something provoked you to turn into an animal. One of the things that I liked was the earliest Roman geographer, Pomponius. So he was around 30 AD roughly. He and a couple other historians from that time talk about these people in Scythia, which was a Turkic nomadic tribe, a very strong one too. So think like Mongolians in a way, similar to that idea. Horse nomads, horse riding nomads. But there were stories of Scythian werewolf people who would spend 10 days as a werewolf and turn back. It was part of their culture. And it's funny too, going through my sources, there's a nice little section in Wikipedia that nothing else talked about, and a little section, and it was just Asia in Asia was what the title was, and it was very simple. And it's really funny because there's so much there for the sort of the Western world, but in Asia they kind of talk about the idea of were-cats and were-leopards and were-tigers. So again, that's that therianthropy, people turning into it. But then in the Turkic areas and the nomads in the steppes, wolves weren't. I mean, they were dangerous, but they were revered. They were like a totemic ancestor. So it wasn't as like scary or as malicious as it was in Europe and everywhere else. They were like, yeah, wolves, they kill us. They're badass. We stay away. They're cool. And so it's really cool. Another kind of outlier is the Norse history behind it. Lots of Norse stories, and they're Norse stories are a little more, I don't know, I don't want to say fun, but yeah, they're a little more lighthearted. And there's one of a father and son finding these cloaks, hides that turn them into wolves, and there's a lot of other kind of things like that. Nothing very straightforward as a werewolf, but definitely like wearing the hide of a wolf. That you also see that imagery in like 460 BC Athens and in vases and things like that, and certain heroes wearing the pelt of a wolf and that. So yeah, wolves obviously deep connection, very revered. But then there's the lycanthropy sort of aspect, which is talked about. Again, I mentioned the Pausanias talking about the Scythian people. Petronius is another. I think he's a geographer as well. He's Greek though, 27 to 66. He talks about the specific affliction. So they're kind of talking about it in more of a specific way. Oh, Herodotus was the other one who talked about. Of
course, it was Herodotus.
I know, yeah. He was someone else who mentioned of the Scythians, which is close to Russia as well. So they would wear the wolfskins for warmth, and it kind of became ingrained in their culture, and then there was a little mystification sort of added to it. A big thing though is the concept of Lycian or Lycian Zeus. So that kind of like literally means wolf Zeus, and the people in Arcadia, a region of ancient Greece, actually worshipped this form of Zeus, wolf Zeus. So, and there's a story of Lycaon or Lycion of Arcadia. Long story short, because it's a fun little story, but he is a king who, in the most popular version of the myth, he tested Zeus by serving him the roasted flesh of his own son, Nyctimus, in order to see whether Zeus was truly all-knowing. So it was like, I wonder if he knows he's eating my kid. So Zeus was really upset, turned Lycaon into a wolf and killed his offspring, but and Nyctimus came back to life. Yay, Nyctimus is alive. Hooray, my dad and all my siblings are dead. So anyway, that's just a kind of a deep ancient Greek connection, and there's wolf Zeus out there, probably like doing the same thing Zeus does, just with more like rug peeing, I guess. But another really like notable sort of mention.
I'm curious now, like if Zeus ever disguised himself as a wolf to seduce women, because he's known to do that.
Wolves are really sexy.
That is the thing. Like, we're kind of dancing around that. We're kind of dwelling on the kind of violence of this.
I have the 3-page Twilight summary coming up. No, just kidding.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really interesting. Yeah, Zeus did shape. He was therianthropic, very therianthropic in other words. But yeah, he absolutely did. And it's Plato in the Republic, which I've totally read, talks of the protector turned tyrant of the shrine of the Lycian Zeus. So in the passage, the character Socrates remarks, the story goes that he who tastes of the one bit of human entrails minced up with those of other victims is inevitably transformed into a wolf. So that's really key. Plato's Republic, really big book. I did not read it. I'm sorry. But I know I'm very aware of it and its importance. And then this story is really important. So the entrails minced up with those of other victims is inevitably transformed into a wolf. That's really important because that's a big part of werewolf lore and culture, and how you turn into a werewolf is you end up like mixing in people's parts and eating them whether you know it or not. And that's what happened to Zeus. And it didn't happen to the king of Lycian, but he ended up getting turned into it because of it.
Right.
And it comes through and through. And that reminds me, so Kyle finally convinced me, my girlfriend finally convinced me to watch The Witcher on Netflix. It is really fantastic. I've been enjoying it. I was kind of over the games, kind of got like over touted, and I was like, bah humbug. But the show is absolutely great. Love Cavill playing him. And there's a fun episode. Spoilers for that show, just a heads up.
Spoilers for the game too. It is as bad as Bryant thinks it is.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. There's an episode where there's this beast that's killed a boy, and he's got like a gash on his chest, and they're like, oh, it's the Vukadlok. The Vukadlok, did it to him. And what's a Vukadlok? Because Witcher is rooted in Slavic mythology, which has deep roots into Proto-Indo-European. So a lot of roots into Greek and Asian myth there too. And Vukadlok is essentially a werewolf. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was Serbian and a couple other Slavic languages. It literally, like, you click Vukadlok and it shows the Wikipedia entry for werewolf in that language. So what I liked about this was it's a direct word for it, but it's a borrowed word. I was looking at the etymology of it, and it's a borrowed word from Greek. And I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but vrikolakos is the borrowed word. And vrikolakos is, I'm going to just quote Wikipedia, is a harmful undead creature in Greek folklore. And Salento culture, which is in the Mediterranean area and Italy area. So, and Vrikolakos is a sort of vampire zombie creature, essentially. So like a ghoul, the Arabic word that we kind of talked about. What's wild though, I've never seen this. I've never heard of this. I feel like that's such a big deal. In the zombie episode we did recently, we talk about how there's evidence of ancient burial sites in like Persia and Greece, very ancient ones, where they would weigh down people's bodies. They would decapitate them. They would separate their body parts, weigh them down with stones. They were afraid of an undead sort of thing happening. And I just like, there was especially with the Byzantine era, there was a lot of Slavic Byzantine sort of communication. And I don't know exactly when the word was borrowed, but I just like that idea of that word transferring over, and it just sort of meaning this flesh eating an undead creature that wants to eat you kind of thing. But for them, it specifically became a werewolf in some cultures. So anyway, that's just a nice little kind of connection. And it's just, there are these ancient things. It's an ancient concept that just keeps coming back and forth again. So there's a lot of these ancient Greek and Roman connections. Pliny the Elder, Pausanias. I said these names before. I don't remember exactly when they were around. Some of those 80s BCs, but these are all people who have discussed the same sort of thing, and in fact with Pliny and Pausanias, they talk about a young athlete, Demarchus, in the Arcadian sacrifice. Again, we're back in Arcadia, of an adolescent boy when Demarchus was compelled to taste the entrails of the young boy. Don't you hate it when you are compelled to do that? He was transformed into a wolf for 9 years. So, and recent archaeological evidence suggests that there was human sacrifice here. Yeah, 9 years, eat some dude's tummy. Yeah.
I mean, I'd do it to become a wolf. I wouldn't do it and then that was my consequence.
Compelled, yeah.
You know, like that
Yeah.
was my goal.
Right. So the Hyginus's from 180 Fabulae and Ovid's Metamorphosis also mentions Lycaon's story. There's the immoral behavior, the cannibalistic aspect. That's a really important part here. Is you have to you get corrupted, and it just totally takes you over. And Wikipedia and a few other sources kind of note Ovid's story is sort of the root of this story. So.
And you have
That's
Peter
sort of
Stumpp eating his son's brains. So
Yeah, and going off of that, it reminds me a lot of basically what we have today as mad cow disease, but Creutzfeldt-Jacobs that we talked about, where humans are eating other humans' flesh, specifically the brain, and it makes them go mad. I mean, it changes their
your behavior,
brain chemistry.
Yeah, and it's a meat consumption. Yeah, absolutely. I never saw anything directly related to that. Funny enough, in my stuff, but yeah, that is absolutely a really good way to think about it.
Well, it's my thesis now. I'm going back to school.
Get to it.
Going to be a doctor of lycanthropy.
It could be like a cautionary tale. Like it could be something cautionary, not only to fear wolves, but like, hey, we don't eat ourselves.
Right.
You know, like if you eat people, you cross this line and become monstrous. You know,
right.
I think that's really interesting.
Well, it notes in Arcadia the signs of human sacrifice. We know that ancient Greek sites did human sacrifice. It kind of became old news after a while, and that sounds like an evolution. And I don't think it is good to eat your own kid's head and things like that.
Peter, is Nintendo sponsoring us? I keep seeing the Labo.
Oh crap! Sorry.
No, it's okay. Call it a Nintendo.
That'll be a fun edit. But yeah, so the next big thing, that's kind of the main extent to what I've got. There's a sort of an evolution in the Middle Ages. So in the 1200s, like there's a famous poem called Bisclavre, which kind of translates as The Werewolf. It's a poem by Marie de France. Good name.
Okay.
Where's she from?
Just make sure she's French, you know?
Right, yeah.
De France.
And it tells the story of a werewolf who's trapped in lupine form by the treachery of his wife. And it's been reworked and things like that. So it kind of sounds like The Princess and the Frog, but it's, evil werewolf guy. So it started kind of coming up more and more. Again, it was so important in literary terms and in the ancient times as well. It also was sort of like a medical sort of thing. But then it did, as stories came, the story like Bisclavre, the person who's stuck as a werewolf, that's a kind of an interesting take. There's the horror take, definitely now and then, and like Peter Stumpp, his tale is a good way of, now I'll kind of gloss over that. I didn't go super deep into the Stumpp story, but the thing is, he did do most of this stuff. He did do some horrendous things. Now that pamphlet is a really cool pamphlet because it survives from its time of it's an English translation from 1590. There's 2 copies of it that exist today in England, and it was a copy of an original German print which is no longer around. But it's a very specific print that describes the life and the witnesses. It's kind of incredible to think about them wanting to sort of record that. But whether or not this guy did all this stuff, we don't know for sure. He admitted to doing it.
Under torture.
Yeah, under threat of torture, under torture, and he was obliterated. They put him on like a wheel with like a normal kind of wheel, and similar to how you kind of crucify someone, but you tie him to it, and he just annihilated him and made a message out of him, making a little thing with a wolf, like a pole, a totem, beheaded his body, put it on top of it, burned. It's insane. His daughter and mistress were dead, strangled, flayed, burned. They were like, none of that stuff anymore. We're gonna go double psycho down. We're gonna double down the psycho just so nobody does what this dude did. So a really kind of crazy thing. But yeah, there was an interesting sort of hysteria to it, and I think we kind of see that better in the Beast of Gevaudan, because of the sort of the urbanization, the way news can spread. and how it further kind of goes from there. So that's kind of what I've got. It comes up into another places in Europe. The Mabinogion, Cammy, is another. There's sort of a Welsh werewolf story in the 12th century book, the Mabinogion. We talked about that when we talked about the concept of a noon, which is sort of like an afterlife in a way. It's an afterlife you can attain. You can find a noon in the beautiful hills of Wales. That's what my name means. Did you guys know that, Bryent?
What?
My name is Welsh, and it means hill.
I know.
Yeah.
You are kind of like a hill.
Thank you. So,
lumpy and...
Yeah. So,
Peter, you're so mean and incorrect.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
A hill of a head. So... Yeah, there's this interesting, during the medieval period into the Renaissance era and so on, more stories. Martin Luther uses the form of the word Werewolf to describe a hypothetical ruler worse than a tyrant who must be resisted. So it's wild, because when I started my research, I would have been like, 12th century writings and so on would have used this as a great literary device. They would have been aware of, they would have used it beautifully. And it's like, oh, well, no, like the Republic is referencing this concept thanks to the werewolf or Wolf Zeus, that badass. But the last kind of big thing, and Cammy sort of just kind of talked about it, is the werewolf trials. Now, this is a new thing that I was not aware of, because you're very familiar with the witchcraft trials becoming more and more famous. I love how they're depicted through Monty Python. It's sort of the lose-lose for the woman, like, she's not a witch. She's dead though now, but she's definitely not a witch, There were werewolf trials, mainly in Switzerland, but the Stumpp story is is a werewolf trial at its essence. It got a little weirder, of course, because he was saying he had the devil's girdle and, all the things that come along with it. But yeah, it was just an interesting story to sort of the importance of werewolves as they sort of evolved. It was similar to what is in the classical era and beyond that, as literary and narrative driven things. Of course, there were stories that kind of grew, but yeah, that's sort of all I wanted to focus on for the most part. You could go on and on. Peter pretty much gave us a wrap of the Beast of Gevaudan. The wolves kept killing people, but this was just a particularly interesting time period, because a 1987 study estimates that there had been 210 attacks resulting in 113 deaths, 49 injuries. 98 of the victims were killed, who were partially eaten. Their throats were ripped out. I mean, these wolves, it was just bad timing for everything. Perfect timing for the wolves. But Jean Chastel did use a mix which included silver and buckshot to take it down. So that's a really interesting sort of thing. I think that might be where we get sort of the idea. I mean, silver is sort of been like an idea. The idea of silver kind of stopping the paranormal and beastly things is an old concept. We could certainly go into that, but I thought it was really cool that this dude was like, yeah, why not throw it in the buckshot?
Yeah,
let's do it. But they go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, if you want to learn more, you could watch the way historically accurate Brotherhood of the Wolf movie, which is so much fun. It is a bonkers French action horror movie about the Beast of Gevaudan. It's got martial arts sequences. It's totally crazy. It looks great too. It's sumptuous costumes and sex and violence. Is great. So
people do like those things. I thought you were just describing The Witcher partially too. Yeah, so
that's like the opposite of Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins.
Oh,
there was zero sex in that.
Hopkins, he's got to do his thing. So I don't go too much into sort of the modern sort of evolution, but it's just once we got to get into the 18th century, it's where we get into as writing has flourished, the printing press has flourished, the fiction and the evolution of werewolves goes, it's legendary at that point, and it's super ingrained. It's just, I feel like once we hit that point, like almost every culture could identify it, could read that story and be like, this is a werewolf story. This is one of those kind of tales. This was a really cool sort of thing to look into. I'll touch on my sources before I forget myself. I never use the site, theconversation.com. Its quip is academic rigor, journalistic flair. And it was a fun read. It gave it to me in a palatable form because there was just so much. But of course, Wikipedia and history.com had a fun little section as well. That was really good. And Ancient Origins, I like to use them a lot. They had a couple things. I didn't really use any of the material, but they had some interesting articles that sort of talk about werewolf hunting and things like that had happened in the past. But again, there's so many aspects to looking at this story and this subject. There's tons of like the Wikipedia C also mentioned the Wendigo, the Indigenous American creature that's like super scary. When I've looked into it, it's horrifying, things like that. So those are definitely episodes that we're gonna run into soon. And this is I wanted this to sort of be a primer to kind of show you the obvious deep roots and the not so obvious deep roots. I mean, I had never heard of Wolf Zeus before this, but there was literally a whole city-state dedicated to Wolf Zeus. There's a Wolf Zeus or there was at least a Wolf Zeus statue in Arcadia. So, I think that covers our lycanology for the day. I'll include some of the links that I have. The conversation piece, it's a great read, and it kind of goes through a lot of what I just talked about. But Peter and Cammy, those were great stories. I think we touched on some stories that no one had really heard of. I'm glad we didn't touch on Teen Wolf or something like that. I was wondering if anyone was going to mention it. I was like,
I love all of those movies. Like any werewolf, if it has a werewolf in it, I love it. Yes, it's my favorite.
See, me and 80s movies, I'm not super big on them.
Oh, it doesn't have to be 80s, just as long as it's a wolf
just
story.
Wolves in general. Now I believe it. Yeah. But now, everyone, we hope you enjoyed the story. We really enjoyed this discussion and looking into it all. Again, welcome to our spoop-tapular, fun October mystery episodes. Please, please, please contact us. Facebook group is one of the easier ways, but contact us on your suburban legends. That's going to be really fun. It was so much fun last time. We'd love your local stories to talk about on the show.
And we need them, so send them to us.
Literally cannot do it without them. So it's Mythstorie, all one word, but story with an IE. You can even, I haven't mentioned our Gmail in forever, but Mythstorie@gmail. Again, Facebook's a great way. We are on Twitter and stuff like that too. Mythstorie.threadless.com. You can buy merchandise. We've got some nice shirts and face masks, skateboards, whatever your heart desires. Well,
throws, blankets,
bath mats.
Yep.
Yeah. You just want to get out with the dude with the spear on your
The
back.
face masks are really cool, actually.
They did turn out quite well. I'm very very nice. Well, Cammy, Peter, thank you once again. Everyone, we will see you next time.
Oh.